flow and the supply of fake news and misinformation more generally be responsive to sort of to those shifting conditions that I talked about.
I'm going to hand the mic over to John, who's picking up some questions from the Dory.
So this is from the London office. Do you have anything particular to say about fake science, or is it all the same no matter what the subject?
So I've done research on vaccine misinformation, and that's certainly, DJ mentioned climate change. So this is certainly something that's not specific to politics. It extends to health and science as well. Right? And vaccines is a good example where it's not an ideological or partisan issue as such, and misinformation can still be quite widespread, and people can still engage in selective exposure and directionally motivated reasoning too. So I think there's reason to question in all of these domains where people have strong views and about an issue that seems to implicate some aspect of their identity. There's a real potential to have counterproductive effects, or for people to seek out information that seems to confirm their views. Right. So just to give you an example, there is a measles outbreak going on right now in Minnesota in the Somali American community predominantly. And the story that's been told by our journalists there is that there was some children had autism and the parents didn't know why. That wasn't a concept they were familiar with. And people started to search. And they found their way to some of the really terrible information out there and have since been and as they became more interested in that, some folks invited the anti-vaccine activists who present this misleading and false science, and they've cultivated that community to the point that their vaccination rates dropped very low, and made them vulnerable to what is now an ongoing outbreak. And measles is a very dangerous disease, explosively contagious, right? So this is it's a good reminder that misinformation doesn't have to be partisan, and it can have very immediate and dangerous consequences.
I have a question about the sort of the psychology side of the recipients of the fake news. I know people who love to be know-it-alls, and they will happily fill in the gaps in their knowledge as they're explaining something. I wonder if any investigation has been done about whether they are particularly vulnerable to the misinformation, or because they are, it's like once they've accepted it, they're going to tout it enthusiastically. I'm inferring that they will do that. I suppose I should leave it to you.
So the closest sort of individual level factor that I can think about there that's been studied is there are psychological studies on the need for closure or the need for certainty, and there's a lot of variation across people in their score on that, right? Like some people, to your point, need to know things and need to fill in the blanks. Now, to the extent that those people are highly partisan, highly political people, directionally motivated reasoning, right, would suggest that they're going to apply their abilities to forming partisan or ideologically consistent views, and I think that I could definitely see that happening. I'm not aware of any studies on sort of the effect of individual level differences like that on the propensity to have misperceptions or something. I don't know if you would add to that.
Yeah, no, that sounds right, and I would just say that people, what you were saying about people kind of filling in the gaps, right? Another thing you might think about here is conspiracy theories often have that function, and which you can think of as a kind of subset of misinformation or misperceptions. Sorry, my microphone's off. You can think of conspiracy theories as a kind of subset of misinformation or misperceptions for people who want to understand what's going on or think they understand what's going on, right, or filling in gaps. Okay? So we don't know why, we don't really understand why autism happens, right? The vaccine story provides a simple explanation, right? There's chaotic and conflicting information about what happened on 9/11. The inside job myth seems to explain what happened. And you go through the list, these misperceptions will often have that flavor of seeming to provide a compelling, simple explanation for what's going on. And some people, I think, do intuitively gravitate to those. There's definitely evidence that people who are predisposed to see the world in that way will disproportionately believe in conspiracy theories.
Here's another question. This one's from Mountain View. There have been some discussion that the issue of misinformation is exacerbated by readers not knowing how to critically read news and or navigate the overwhelming nature of the current high-choice media environment. How might this concern be relevant to Google?
Ooh, that's a good one. Let me say a couple things. There's been a lot of interest since the election in news and media literacy, and I think educators are thinking about this as an issue. So one of the things Google might be able to do is support news and media literacy as a component of civics education, as something that librarians could teach. There's lots of ways in which we might help equip people to become better citizens.